Hey everyone, Temporal here, and for this session we are going to be reviewing a post that was put up on Overwatch University. This was put up by Anna McKessel here, and they're in the educational space. They do some coaching, so that's certainly interesting. They watch some of our videos. We're going to see what they have to say. I hope it is interesting. So as we get our way through here, they're mostly going to be talking about, well, they've told us what their three questions are. Let's just get into the post. They get the three questions here. We're mostly going to be talking about the ranks of Overwatch. What do they mean? How does the game change, or does the game change at different ranks? Their central thesis being, no, it really doesn't. So, skill rating is almost useless as a metric. Overwatch doesn't play differently at different ranks and operates exactly the same from Bronze to Overwatch League. The reason the Shanghai Dragons won the Overwatch League Grand Finals is the same reason players win their games in Silver, Gold, and shockingly, Krusty and Moon aren't head coaches because of their SR. Okay, so obviously we've led in with some somewhat controversial statements here. That's the point. That's how you draw attention. If it's worth saying, it's perhaps a little bit controversial. That's not always true. But if you're going to get people's attention and get them to read something long like this, you want to be a little bit shocking. So that's not too surprising here. But as we look at this, doesn't play differently at different ranks, operates exactly the same. I mean, operates exactly the same. We're obviously going to need some defense for. I understand where he's going with doesn't play differently at different ranks, but operates exactly the same. I mean, team play versus ladder play is always going to have some inherent differences based on you haven't practiced together. You can't guarantee everyone is going to be in comms. You don't have anything in terms of, oh, we know what it means when we do this. Like, there's no structure to that in some ways. Obviously, there's some of like, hey, we all think we know what the meta is, especially as you get to higher ranks, but that's less true in, say, Silver than it is in Masters, that there's a general understanding of what the meta is or sort of how to play the composition. Even if that understanding is wrong, I suppose there's a wrong understanding at both levels, but there's a less wrong one at a different level. But I suspect that'll be covered. So let's continue through here. Krusty and Moon aren't head coaches because of the rest are right. They're head coaches because they do that job better than anyone else we've been able to find. Okay. I present this open letter to the Overwatch community in hopes it might spark discussion on what skill rating tells us about a player and their play, and about educators and their content. Okay? The written portion summarizes the 30-minute video. I recommend choosing text version because it's honestly better and shorter. Perfectly fine. There is no text version of my response. My response here is going to be in video. Okay, here are the central questions. 1. Does Overwatch play differently at different ranks? Will players' game sense apply into lower ranks? And can a player improve using coaching designed for higher rank players? Interesting question. What does a person's skill rating really tell us about them? I expect there's going to be a controversial take here. Let's see. 3. Does an educator's skill matter and should you care about it? Okay, so my off the bat immediate responses to these are going to be, will players' game sense apply into lower ranks? Absolutely. If you've developed game sense correctly, you've actually developed it, you're actually tracking where the players are, you're actually tracking respawn counts, map control, things like that, cooldowns available, ults available, all those things that we could fit into the category of game sense. If you're tracking those, it'll absolutely apply to lower ranks. What's different, however, is you have to make some adjustments. If you're using a shortcut, a heuristic for some of your game sense there of, hey, you've acclimated to the game goes at this pace, or to getting a grav takes 2 fights, or to getting a X takes 3 fights or 1 fight, or to, hey, people are back this quickly, you can acclimate, but you can acclimate that same way to a certain meta, where you're used to there being more fights per map in a dive meta than, say, a brawl meta, just because of the relative speed at which heroes return, that sort of thing. So, yeah, there can be some level of, hey, people get confused or they're not acclimated right, and there's definitely some degree of when pros play in lower rank games, they actually get confused or like this game doesn't play the way they're used to, that sort of thing. That's mostly, I'd argue, coming down to this thing that I've talked about before with like, hey, if you have the Lucio in plat using speed more often, they might be okay, speed rather than healing aura. They might be okay because their Reinhardt is going to know how to use speed. Whereas if you have the Lucio in silver using healing more often, that might work a little bit better for them because their Reinhardt isn't going to know how to use speed. The real answer is the Lucio in plat isn't better for using speed. The real answer is like, yes, speed is fundamentally sort of the better piece of the kit there, but you're going to, and you can go, oh, I got more value by playing Lucio in this, was able to stay plat by playing it with speed, whereas heals got me silver, but if the plat fell down to silver, speed wouldn't work for them and they'd actually lose more SR, and that comes down to, hey, the Reinhardt player is taking better advantage whether in plat, whether the Lucio player is conscious of it or not, and that won't work. But the true answer, if the Lucio was actually good, actually understood it, is he'd go, hey, I swap to speed as my Rhine is moving and moving out, and I'm on heals the rest of the time in the poke phase, in a brawl phase where range isn't the issue, that sort of thing. Like, that would be the true thing. So this Lucio player, like, their solution sort of works better, but it's not actually right. They don't actually understand the fundamental of it. And I've used that example a few times. I could use a different example if people want, but I think that one does a pretty good job of explaining it. Okay. Um, so will the game sense apply at lower ranks? Can a player improve using coaching designed for higher ranked players? Usually, yes, they usually can. You do have to be able to sort of actively think about the game, though, and are some things like, okay, if I'm coaching, for example, a Masters or a GM player as Winston, and they're playing Double Bubble, I am going to tell them to feed their Zarya energy. If they're playing in Silver, I might not tell them to do that because the truth is you just don't trust those bubbles to be there. And you might very quickly determine that the bubbles aren't going to be there in your Masters game and go, okay, well, I'm not going to work with this Zarya because it's a feed if I jump in and don't get the bubble. So I'm instead going to have to play a more passive Winston, which is totally fine. But in Silver, you might not even try for the more aggressive Winston, even if you see the Zarya, because you just don't expect that to work. So there's a little bit there, but let's see where this goes. What does a person's skill rating tell us about them? Hey, Kessel, there we go. You really hit a hornet's nest here. I saw that. 6 hours old, and you've got quite a few comments. So this is an interesting one. Person skill rating does tell us how successful they are on ladder. That's what a person's skill rating tells you. That said, the people who are very successful on ladder are often going to be the easier ones to shape in organized play to be successful because building some of those skills on ladder is challenging. It's good. You're not going to have very many situations where you go, this player can only get to 3K or to 4.1K or whatever on ladder, and they're going to be the best organized player. They're going to be the absolute best. They're going to be better than the MVPs of the last 2 seasons. No, they're really not. Organized play and ladder are a bit different, but the reality is you do need very, very good ladder players, and that's why when you're setting up um, open tryouts, you set a pretty high threshold because you can effectively go, it's very, very unlikely that we're interested in a 4-3 player, a 4-2 player. And if they're really, really that good, they'll have found their way up the other way through tier 3 teams into tier 2 teams, winning trial, that sort of thing. You're really not missing out on very many opportunities there. So I don't know where this is going to go, but you really do need a pretty high skill rating. It is actually a pretty good metric of how a player is going to do. Obviously, team play matters, though. That's why we get differences between scrim SRs and team SRs, where team's average SR might be 3.7, but they scrim at a 3.9 or a 4K level because, of course, they do have that teamwork, that synergy. They've worked on that. They've improved on that. But guess what? It would be even better to get a 4.0 team and have them scrim at a 4.3 level after they've worked on those synergies, etc. And yes, there's some level of, oh, Bo, no, these guys had great synergy and it's better and it makes them that, yeah, okay. You can most of the time find a similar level player that's a higher level player that's going to be able to build that same synergy. But okay, let's get onto it because that's enough for me, and I want to see more of what the author, Kessel, who's in the chat here, has to say about it. Unfortunately, can't VC, but curious on the thoughts. I would have invited you on, but that's perfectly fine. Chipster has flat out said he doesn't. He can't play low ranks because he has no idea what people are going to do. Exactly. That I knew that would come up, and that's something that I hope is going to get addressed here. I can address that myself. I have my answers, but let's see what we get here. Question 1. Why is Overwatch fundamentally the same? A game of Overwatch is a battle between two teams of imperfect players who make errors. Each team strives for further perfection than the others, and to use their given resources more efficiently than the competition. It's a game of flow, it's a game of how, a flawed individual can contribute to a team's strategy through intuition and logic. Regardless of rank, the team that can most effectively use all of its chosen heroes will win the match. I mean, there's some truth to that, right? Like, regardless of what your SR says next to the player, regardless of what the average team SR says next to the team, if they if they hit more shots, put more pressure on, use their cooldowns better, control the map better than the other team, they are going to win. If they do 200 points of damage to the 200 HP hero before that hero receives any healing, that hero is going to take a trip to the spawn. So, like, yes, but the players with the higher SR are likely to do better there. Okay. And the higher SR ones are more consistently more likely to put that damage together and get that elim. But we'll see. They haven't stated otherwise yet. Teams use heroes effectively through map control. Sure. Map control means traveling through or occupying positions that allow you or your teammates to use your heroes more effectively than the opponents can use theirs. Good enough definition, sure. Good map control will enable yourself, disable the enemy, or both. I think it's always both. The opponents just don't always realize it. So is it really disabling them if they don't realize that they should need it? Good question. Okay. Each team wants to pressure the enemy, pressure being damage or threats of damage. Sure. Pressure forces an enemy to use resources like cooldown abilities, forces them to leave their positions, or outright eliminates them if they lack resources and cannot retreat. Or just does damage. I mean, I'd consider losing health pressure. Like, even if you don't get cooldowns out of them, even if they don't leave their position, like, if they've lost health, you've put pressure on them. And I think you know that because you put pressure as damage. So, yeah. Pressure forces an enemy. We talked about that. Okay. Map control means understanding how you can use your team's pressure while minimizing the enemy's pressure. Map control, I mean, it doesn't really mean that. We defined what it means, and now we're defining it again, and that's a different definition. Map control helps enable the team to use its heroes effectively, macro, while each player works to use their individual hero to contribute to map control, micro. I mean, map control is a really, really, really important concept, and map control wins games from a macro level. I'm good with you there, but let me take a look at this. Maybe you didn't say what I think you said here. Map control means understanding how you can maximize your team's pressure while minimizing the enemy team's pressure. I mean, it's part of it. Cooldown cycling can also have to do with your pressure and how you sustain it. Map control has a lot to do with angles, but timing is another element. Map control helps enable the team to use its heroes effectively macro, while each player works to use their... Map control helps enable the team to use its heroes effectively. Yeah, I'll go with that. Okay. I just don't want to oversell map control. Map control is absolutely amazing, but this looked like a map control is the absolute end all of be all. And while it's huge, it's not absolutely everything. Okay. You consider health to be a resource. Yeah, good. In low ranks, players are unskilled at their heroes, meaning a player will need relatively low efficiency to get more value out of their hero than the opponents. In high ranks, players improve mechanically, tactically, or both. Sure. The higher you go, the more it has to be both. This improvement requires players to play their hero more efficiently to continue climbing. For example, a playstyle like heal botting on Ana will work in Bronze and Silver. It's an easy way to get value on Ana because it's simple strategically and the player lacks the mechanics to comfortably contribute pressure. Pressure in this case being, hey, hit your damage shots, hit offensive abilities, that sort of thing. And this is true, and in some ways, this may even be a reference to what we recently did, which was review a heal botting guide for Ana. That was, oh, you should play Ana better like this, and this will help your Ana, and it's some form that gets basically hard stuck in plat. Maybe it can break into diamond still, but it basically gets hard stuck in plat because you can't get enough out of the hero by just heal botting. There's not enough value into the hero, which is what we're getting into here. So this is a good point. Kessel says in chat, I consider maximizing your pressure overall and minimizing enemy pressure overall to be how people effectively use its heroes, more so than the opponent. Things like angles or strategy for execution. One more time, I consider maximizing your pressure overall and minimizing enemy pressure overall to be how people effectively use their heroes, more so than the opponent. Okay. Strategy for execution, definitely not an end-all be-all. Okay, sounds good. Speaking of which, if you guys are enjoying this type of stuff and you guys want more people in chat for us to chat with, have disagreements with, that sort of thing, do make sure to hop into the post. You can, of course, upvote either the post itself or my response here to get more people into here so we can have a more interesting discussion. I do appreciate that. Okay. But in ranks above mid-plat, heal botting won't work, and I'd say that's about the right rank for that to be true right now, currently anyways. It's not efficient enough. The team won't always need more healing, such as when they have cover and resources. Additionally, the team's pressure will often exceed a healer's ability to negate it, meaning healing will be less efficient than simply helping eliminate the enemies and remove the pressure entirely. Right, there's situations where, hey, if that if that Pharah in this guy has 60 health left, you are much better off just shooting them and removing them and just ending the incoming damage, the raining of rockets, than you are trying to continue to heal through those rockets, especially if they're mercy boosted rockets, and if you don't eliminate them right now, the rockets will continue forever. It is simply more efficient to take that offensive shot. It's also more efficient if everyone on your team is full health, and you'd otherwise just be wasting the time waiting to reactively heal someone. And yes, you might reactively heal them a little bit faster if you just waited and were ready for them to take damage than if you took the offensive shot, but that's still not as efficient as taking the offensive shot and then being a moment slower on the heal. Okay. It's not that healing your teammates is bad, is bad, but that's not always the most efficient use of your hero in a given moment. High rank players understand this. For the sake of efficiency, teams will rotate through cover to close the distance when using close range heroes, or set up crossfire angles to prevent the enemy from using cover. This allows a team to use their heroes more effectively than their opponent. Yes, that is absolutely true. Okay. Obviously, the game appears different in Bronze than Grandmaster, even if the game's fundamentals around map control don't change. Sure, this is the root of the misconception that ranks need to play differently. Is it though? Obviously, the game appears differently in Bronze and Grandmaster, even if the game's fundamentals around map control don't change. This is the root of the misconception that ranks need to play differently. I don't think map control is the root of that misconception, but I do think that the game looks so different is the root of that misconception. Sure. This misconception occurs because players fail to adjust their play into the context of a specific match and mistakenly associate context with rank. Right. There's a lot in Overwatch of like, oh, this is what you do. There's a desire, and it's because this is how people would like to train. This is how people would like feedback to work. This is how people would like climbing the ladder to work. In most things in life, you go, okay, well, if I change something and I get better results, I'll keep doing it that way that I changed it that got better results, and that'll work. But that doesn't work as well for Overwatch because it's so complicated and each match is different. So if you changed and went, oh, I'm going to go ahead and let's say shoot at Pharaohs is the change that you made on Anna, that's great. Shooting at Pharaohs can be a great change on Anna, only that might have worked differently in your match where your healing partner was a Moira than in the match where your healing partner was, say, a Lucio. Okay, right, and that doesn't mean that shooting at Pharaoh is wrong, but it's more nuanced than that. And it won you the match where you played with Moira. It didn't work as well when you played with Lucio, and that's not to say you shouldn't take shots at Pharaoh when you have Lucio. You just have to be more precise in your calculation of how to do it. I know this may seem confusing, but bear with me. Hopefully, Kessel's going to give a better example than I did. A player in bronze can't perform the same tasks as a grandmaster player. They lack physical, mechanical skill, experience, and tactical understanding of the game. Bronze players will also encounter inefficient teammates who play disregarding their team. So did the GM once. Inefficient play becomes the standard in bronze. A player will focus on heal botting because they lack the mechanics and understanding to contribute to pressure. Sure. A bronze Reinhardt won't have a top tier Lucio or discipline and feeds as they struggle to close the distance. A cowboy player, we're going with that, eh? Okay. A cowboy player in gold won't have the aim to play aggressively like a professional without feeding. Sort of. It's more they're worried that they'll lose if they take the offense. Okay, sure. A support player won't receive as much peel and resources. I mean, I kind of object to that last line, just because I think it furthers a misconception about peel that I think we should stamp out of the community in general. Like, yes, in organized play, you'll sometimes get peel from your team from people that aren't your other support. You might have a diva pay a little attention to you. You might have Sigma stay with you specifically to peel for you. But, like, pressure is peel, and you know this. You know that most of the time you peel other than your other support. So, like, say you're a Zen, you have a Brig that actively peels for you, sure. But most of your team's version of peeling for you, except for specific matchups like a Doomfist coming in or a specific call that you're going to counter dive, most of the time your peel in a lot of these situations is going to be, well, their monkey isn't allowed to get in with full health because he's not allowed to stage appropriately because my ball is in his way on the flank route. My ball doesn't come back and pile drive, though yes, he can if we're hitting a counter dive, but my ball didn't let Winston stage correctly. It's a tangent. I won't go too hard into it. It's just, this misconception concerns me because support players really tend to not understand or tend to think, and you know this from having seen this for this subreddit, that support players tend to be like, my McCree and my Diva and my Genji and my everyone needs to just be peeling for me. And it's like, no, your partner support will peel for you. Maybe your Diva will peel for you. Maybe. But she's honestly usually better prioritized peeling for her Reinhardt, for example. Okay. Hmm. I didn't think about how that one probably gets misinterpreted, but definitely Peel is a relatively small piece of the puzzle. Yes. Notice that none of these situations are strictly tied to the tank. Or to the rank, excuse me. If a GM Reinhardt has no Lucio, they still need to close the distance to use their hero efficiently. True. But they have better discipline, can use cover better, and might focus more on holding space rather than aggressively rushing at enemies. Okay? Holding space, guys, does not mean standing in the open with your shield up. Holding space does mean taking a corner that you can adequately hold. But yes, a professional cowboy player understands their limitations and does not commit more aggressively than their accuracy can support. Sometimes they commit less aggressively than their accuracy can support because they're worried that the other cowboy is more aggressive, is more accurate. The truth is, if you position well, you can still win. But okay, that's fine. The GM support player receives more resources but faces higher enemy pressure, creating an equilibrium. And even without team resources, they understand how to use smart positioning and stay safe. Sure. Application of a hero into context or playstyles of a hero will always change based on the circumstance. Right. In some situations, it may be better to use aspects of a hero in one way as opposed to another because the context dictates what efficient use of a hero looks like. But this has no relation to rank specifically. So it's true. You get into situations where you might look at your team's composition and go, our team is better at poke than their team, so we should poke. So I should just stand back and play my hero like our team is better than poke. But then if your team doesn't actually play in a pokey manner, well, you need to adjust how you're playing. And you're going, oh no, but like this is how I would play it in a GM game or a Masters game. And the truth is, yeah, you would play it that way in a GM or a Masters game because the people understand what's going on there and they understand that their team is the better poke aspects. When your gold game, your team doesn't actually understand what its win conditions look like, things like that. So you need to play into the reality of what's happening, not into the reality of what you think should be happening. But the GM player also should be playing into the reality of what's happening. It's just their thought of what should be happening will more often be true, which can be a little confusing. Okay. Low ranked players often have limited playstyle options because they lack the mechanics and tactical knowledge. Okay. For example, a Baptiste can easily carry in bronze by focusing on damage rather than healing, but it's much harder mechanically. Sure. A DPS player can easily carry by flanking and creating crossfires, but it requires much more precise timing, awareness, and mechanics. It requires more patience. Yeah. Thus, people say support should heal bot in low ranks, and a DPS player should just group up with their team. Please don't group up with your team. Like, even with poor mechanics, the easiest way out for a DPS or off-take player is to abuse angles. It really is, even if your mechanics are worse than the other team's DPS. But these playstyles aren't dependent on the rank itself because the context can appear at any rank. Okay? A top 500 player will have to focus on purely healing at times, but understands when to shift towards aggressive play and is capable of it. A diamond tank player, even when put in a plat lobby, can use their stronger mechanics and strategy to exert more pressure than their enemy, while handling the enemy pressure better with their superior positioning and resource use. Okay, okay. A good DPS player will know that sometimes they will need to group up with their core and stack, such as when rotating, while oftentimes they'll need to set up angles. Yep. Differences in ranks are because of lower ranked players being inflexible in playstyles, because they lack the mechanics, experience, or tactical understanding to adapt. There's also some frustration around expectation, and this is what pros run into or GMs run into when they're doing unranked to GM type stuff, where they expect, sort of what I was talking about before, that the game is going to play in a certain way because, well, of course, this is what you do here. This is the solution, and this isn't mechanically too challenging for anyone to do here. But they don't do it because their understanding of the game is different. The player at the level, their understanding of the game is Ryan is going to put his shield up, and we're going to shoot through his shield. Now, they won't actually shoot through their Reinhardt shield. They'll just shoot while they hope their other team shoots at their Reinhardt shield rather than rotate on the enemy. But yes, yes. Um, Differences in ranks are because of lower ranked players being inflexible in playstyles because they lack the mechanics, experience, or tactical understanding to adapt. And that would fall into tactical understanding to adapt. But it can be confusing when you have the tactical understanding to understand what should be happening, or you think you do, but the players have a different understanding, and that very frequently happens in lower ranks where there's 6 players, and between them, there's 3 different understandings of how you should be taking the fight. And one of those understandings might be right or closer to correct than the others, but all of you are wrong if it's and all of you aren't going to have a good time if you're on different ones. Hey, Scott Free, thank you. I will have a great day. I hope you do too. Okay, but you can't say that a player in bronze should play differently than a player in diamond. When in either rank, they'll have to tailor their play to a wide variety of contexts. They'll have to tailor to what is actually happening on the field. Yes. Adapting a hero's play to optimize efficiency isn't restricted to the rank, and neither are playstyles. Sure. A low rank player can develop mechanics and experience through consistent practice. A low rank player can learn from experience, coaching, and self analysis to develop their tactical understanding of the game. Regardless of rank, the game operates on the same map control principles and has to adapt their play to the situation. Sure. Just because lower ranked players are inflexible does not mean that's the only way to play or the most efficient way to improve and climb. Players climb in Overwatch by improving their efficiency and learning how to apply their specific heroes in many different contexts. I mean, that's one way to climb. That's one way to climb. The reality is mechanical skill does continue to increase up the ladder. Like, it does increase up the ladder, and the people who are like, oh no, you can have terrible mechanics and be in GM, they're terrible mechanics for GM. They're not terrible mechanics for plat or terrible mechanics for diamond to be in GM. Like, that's not how it works. You do have other things you need to do, play, and etc. That said, this says players climb in Overwatch by improving their efficiency, and increasing your mechanics will increase your efficiency. So I suppose we'll say include that in here. It's just the second part says, and learning how to apply their specific heroes in many different contexts. Okay. That's why you separated it with a comment. Yeah, I see it. I see it. Yep. We're on the same page. No, if you think Ryan does not have mechanical efficiency increases to make, mechanics to upgrade Carolina, you should go watch some of the northeastern matches that I've posted here, where I spectate our main tank specifically while he's playing Ryan. He will show you. It'll become very clear that mechanics matter even to a Reinhardt player. His mechanics are very good even for a 4-6 player on all of his main tanks, but on his Reinhardt, and you will see that fire strike accuracy, that pin accuracy, like, it will surprise you how much mechanical difference there is there. Okay. The reasoning that justifies a good decision in Overwatch League follows the same logic that justifies a good decision in Bronze, and all possible playstyles are just a way of applying a hero's full capabilities. Context rules everything. All the advice in the world is meaningless without reasoning. It's not totally meaningless without reasoning, but okay. Good advice can be taken too far and become negative. Oh, we've certainly seen that happen. While poor advice can work sometimes or encourage reflection. Sure. The best position in one situation may not be the best later, even against the same opponents playing the same heroes on the same map. Because we're all imperfect, unpredictable, and evolving individuals, a perfect meta team composition is worthless if the enemy team more efficiently enables their heroes. Most of the time, yeah, there's been times where a meta composition simply is better, even if they are way better at the enemy composition, but your comp is just not going to break because it's broken. Anyway. Okay, getting a little more spicy, I think. People often disregard rank, saying that it only applies on a rank by rank basis. This ironically perpetuates player inflexibility and reduces growth because it encourages people to stick to a certain playstyle rather than learning the logic behind tailoring play to a situation. They try to define each rank as its own single context rather than learning adaptive play and pushing themselves to improve further. It's tough. It's tough. Like, I totally get why they do that. People go, oh, it's rank by rank. And the reason they say it's rank by rank is because they tried something, or hopefully this is why they get there. They tried something and it didn't work. It didn't win them their next game, their next 3 games, whatever the case was. And they go, see, that doesn't work here. I went and did this and I just got blown up. And okay, you got blown up because you pushed when your Zarya bubble wasn't ready. Like, yes, it is still good advice that you need to push when you have the resources, the health to push. You should swing until you're out of armor. General rule, not hard rule. But you also do need to be considering what the cooldown trades look like, what the resources are. Again, going as an example. And because it doesn't work, they then go, okay, well, that doesn't work. It must be something different that I need for this rank specifically. And it's not that. It's just that the game is really complicated. And that's why we find micro habits to improve people on this channel. We go, hey, let's go find your habits. Let's build your habits one at a time. And those habits that we point out when we're reviewing someone are not always the specific one that would have won them that single game, because it's not about winning that single game. To do that, you have to be very flexible, and you actually have to practice a different skill of recognizing who exactly is working, what exactly isn't working, how do you enable win conditions faster, shut down opponents' win conditions more consistently, that sort of thing. Okay. Question 1A. Does Overwatch play differently at different ranks? I mean, this is the main question, it seems like, in my opinion, for you. Overwatch appears differently at different ranks because differences in player efficiency will lead to different contexts, but it does not play differently because at all ranks, players aim to apply their hero to the context based on the same logical principle of map control. The reasoning behind a top 500 player's position is equally applicable to a bronze player because both players focus on applying their hero efficiently in their respective contexts. The reasoning behind a top 500 player's positioning is equally applicable to a bronze player because both players focus on applying their hero efficiently in their respective contexts. Sure, a rank does not contain one context, and similar contexts can appear across different ranks. There's a little bit. It's equally applicable, but your positioning can change based on, and again, I think you know this, based on what your opponents are feasibly capable of doing. Um, if the mechanical level of your opponents doesn't allow them to, say, hit you when you're wall riding on Lucio, you can get away with stupider wall riding than you could in GM. But I don't really think this disagrees with that. Yeah, it doesn't. A rank does not contain one context, and similar contexts can appear across different ranks. It's a fine line, but situational play does not mean playing differently by rank. It's not playing differently by rank, but it can mean playing differently by whatever your opponent's actually proven that they're capable of. You know, you're 3 minutes into a match, 4 minutes into the match, you've now gathered some data on your opponents. You actually have a little bit of a read on them and what they can and can't get away with. It's all really nuanced. That's why it's been 3 weeks of trying to crunch the whole piece. I get it. I get it. Nuanced material isn't received well. You know that. You know that. But it has to be for this game to work because this game is so complicated. Hold the choke. There you go. There you go. That's not nuanced. That's simple. Okay. Question Question 1B. Will a player's game sense apply into lower ranks? Game sense means a player's intuition or instinct and definitely applies across all ranks. I don't really know that I want to call it instinct because we train it. We can train game sense, and I'm not convinced that you can train instinct. So, like, intuition was a better word. It's not really intuition. You're not truly intuiting it. You're actually deducting it based on context clues that you have in terms of or am I flipping those? Whatever. You're concluding it based on context clues that you have. That might be Sherlock Holmes's fault since he always flipped them. You're using it in terms of clues that you have in terms of how long ago did they get eliminated? What cooldowns did you see? What silly callout did you get from your teammate? Did you hear footsteps over there recently? Oh, did you see a bullet trail? That sort of thing. You are gathering it based on all of those things. You train intuition for sure, and instinct is just a more common term for it, except that instinct really is you had that without training. It's you just know it's sort of default in your genes type thing. So I don't think that's right. Um, we'll look it up. Online dictionaries are not amazing these days, but let's say okay, essential meaning of instinct. A way of behaving, thinking, or feeling that is not learned, a natural desire or transcendency that makes you want to act in a particular way. So not learned, or so not learned makes you want to act in a particular way. Something you know without learning or thinking about it, yeah. A natural ability. So no, I'm axing that one. Sorry. Okay. Mm-hmm. Draws parallels between similar contexts that a player has encountered, leading them to react quickly or make predictions. Right. A player may encourage unfamiliar contexts when playing outside their rank, but this just leads to expanding on their current game sense. It also just, the speed is different. But sure. The experience has to start somewhere, and experienced players understand how to improve their play in a variety of situations. Sure. Question 1C. Can a player improve using coaching designed for higher ranked players? A player can certainly improve from coaching designed for higher ranked players. All players are striving to use their heroes more efficiently, so it's beneficial to develop understanding from more efficient players than yourself, as long as you're actively thinking about it while watching it. Just going and watching a player play top 500 games, GM games, is like, oh yeah, this is interesting. But similar to watching Owl, it's just entertainment unless you're actively thinking about it. Unless you're actively thinking about, well, why did they go do that? Well, they went there. I don't usually go there. Are they right for going there? Because it might not just be that, hey, them going and standing on gas station is simply better than what you're doing. There may be a reason they're standing on gas station. It might have to do with the composition. It might have to do with what they learned from the previous rounds about their opponents and what they're predicting them to come out on. Like, there are reasons to some of these things. Wait, it's a high level game and they're not holding on gas station? What's going on now that things are different, etc.? Okay, well, it's an extra time round. The cart got shoved really, really shallow and they have to hold differently. But these are different contexts and you have to recognize why they're doing these things. And even if you can't, you have to actively think about these things. And you should not just assume that, well, they're higher ranked than you, so what they're doing is strictly better. It frequently will be, but guess what? You're going to see differences between, oh, you watched one player do something, you watched another player on the same hero do something. Why are they different? They're both higher ranked than you. Well, you have to think about that and go, okay, why do the situations differ? Or is one player wrong and can you figure out why? Uh-huh. A player can certainly improve from coaching designed for high ranked players. All players are striving to use their heroes more efficiently, so it's beneficial to develop understanding from more efficient players than yourself. In low ranks, the same gameplay may not be the most efficient, but understanding of why their play is efficient in high ranks will help you learn what plays are efficient within your own context. Right, you have to be thinking about the why. Good call out. A low ranked player's flexibility is limited due to less mechanics and strategy, but they can always grow into their understanding as they gain experience. Sure, sure. Question 2. What does SR tell us about a person? Okay. As we've covered, players move upwards in rank as they increase their mechanics, tactical understanding of the game, or both. Mechanics mean the subconscious or physical capabilities and reflexive habits behind gameplay. Well, tactical understanding means the broader decisions behind gameplay and using a hero efficiently, such as ability usage, positioning, and macro. Okay? Both mechanical and tactical improvements increase a player's efficiency on a hero, which is why a player in Diamond can be all aim, no brain, or vice versa. Yeah, that's still mostly true. Diamond really won't let you get away with being all of one or the other anymore. In the beginning, it would. Now we've sort of gone where that you're. Anyway, doesn't matter. Players at the same rank have many different skills, but are approximately equal in general efficiency. Yes. And as you get higher, people get more and more predictable in the skills that they have because you can get, we'll say Diamond. I think it's now lower. I think Diamond was true at the beginning of the game. You can get to, let's pretend Diamond with all of, your effectively strategic skills filled out, but none of your mechanical skills or vice versa, so it can be hard to predict what your team can do, what your team can support, that sort of thing. And as you get higher, it in some ways gets easier to predict because your teammates are somewhat more consistent in, okay, they're going to be more filled out on both. They're not going to be perfect on both. If they were absolutely perfect on both, they'd be, a 5,000 SR player. We jest, but yeah. But they're going to be more consistent and they can deliver 80% of this, 70% of this, that sort of thing. And that's a lot easier to play around in some ways to understand. It makes it more predictable than someone who can deliver 90% this or 80% this and 0% this, or vice versa. So there is some frustration, and that is one of the things that pros get confused by on their way up in unranked to GM type things. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Players of the same rank have different skills, but are approximately equal in general efficiency. But every player is a unique individual with their own balance of these factors, meaning SR fails to tell us the amount a player has invested into these factors. Right, did they put it all into dexterity, or did they go hard on intelligence? We don't know. It's even worse when you consider mechanics and tactical understanding have their own subskills. Absolutely. A player may have strong projectile aim, but poor tracking, while being good at positioning, but bad at effective ability usage. Sure, a player's personal situation also affects their rank. Oh, a ton, a ton. Tilt is worth hundreds of SR. Hundreds. Way more than you think. Even small amounts of tilt. The rank will often drop if they are occupied with work, school, or hobbies because they all reduce a player's consistency and capability to dedicate time to the game. If a player cannot afford optimal computer hardware, it can affect reactions or mechanics, sure, Players might have gained SR queuing with a friend and now cannot perform at the same level alone. Sure, and that might be they highlighted a specific efficiency together. That might be, oh, they were getting boosted, but it might be they highlighted a specific efficiency together. Like, people think of, oh, well, the Mercy got boosted by who they're doing with. Well, maybe, but does the McCree that they were doing with also fall when they play individually? Oh, they did? Then what actually happened is, hey, those two had developed a synergy and they were getting value or efficiency off of the synergy. You could do the same thing with a Winston Genji, a ball tracer, that sort of thing. Is the ball getting boosted by the tracer or the tracer getting boosted by the ball? Maybe, but not necessarily. They may have found a good efficiency together there. Okay. People pay for account boosting or play while drunk. Yep. Sometimes people climb while the hero they play is incredibly strong and now lack the mechanics or tactical understanding to reach that same level of pressure and survival. Sure, there are mental factors such as confidence and anxiety or just being tired. There are social factors such as wanting to flex according to teammates or avoiding the use of voice chat. Avoiding the use of voice chat is worth SR to most people. It just adds SR. Let's be serious. There's simply too many variables for us to purely simplify a player's capabilities down to their rank. Skill rating can be used when you need to broadly filter people by efficiency, such as when scouting for a professional team, but it won't be the deciding factor when hiring compared to traits like intelligence, good attitude, willingness to learn, flexibility, passion for the game, and growth potential. Yes, mostly. I might go a little darker than you with this and suggest that it won't be the deciding factor, but it's not wrong to be using it most of the time as a threshold for who you're going to look at. And the reality is, even if you set 4-4 as your open threshold, for example, like, yes, you at that point should have a small enough pool that you can study them and analyze them individually. But the player that is 4-6 versus the player that is 4-4 is consistently going to be better most of the time, and you're most of the time going to take the 4-6 player even if their teamwork is worse, things like that, unless you just see huge growth potential and mostly non-mechanical growth potential in that 4-4 player. But okay, that's fine. And you see this with what the Owl teams do too. At least I hope it's not the SR as the factor. Right. You do want individual scouting to happen, and the reality is the scouting has never been amazing. The scouting has never been amazing for Overwatch League, for contenders. Scouting has never been something that teams are amazing at. There's a little bit too much of a, well, we want you because other people scouted you and other people tell us you're good. Like, there's always been a little bit too much of that, which is disappointing. The scouting landscape has really taken a while to get good. There's always been a few people who are good at it. Like, in my contenders coaching era, the team that was probably the best at scouting was Second Wind. Second Wind would just go find, and honestly, that was what led to them being a successful not org. But that was what was their success secret, was they were better at scouting, better at finding unknowns than anyone else. You could look at someone like Boston Uprising in Owl, and Boston Uprising tries to do scouting. They try to grab cheap players and use that and do that sort of thing and find unknowns, but they're pretty so-so on it. They've found some great pieces, but they've also had a lot that are not so much great like that. The reality is most people are doing the, what's their version of scouting? Well, who won? Who are other people saying is good? Okay, well, we won't be wrong if we pick them, so that's good. Or who just won Korean contenders? It's not impressive. Second Wind was nuts. Yes, they were. Second Wind were so well known for their scouting. Yeah, they went tough. Yeah, I love how we all just agree on this. Uh, just recently says, you mean SR actually successfully roughly sorts players into correct skill brackets given large enough sample size? Surprise Pikachu face. Okay. 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 There we go. So let's move on here. Question 2A. What does a person's skill rating really tell us about them? A player's skill rating provides a general idea of how efficient they are at playing their played heroes, but it says nothing about knowledge, mechanics, personal situation, or character traits. I mean, no, it doesn't say nothing about those things because well, I get what you're trying to say. I'll finish reading it. Similarly to statistics, you cannot tell the full story on just a number without context. If you don't look between the lines, you fail to recognize a player's individual strength. So if we compared this to baseball, we could take something like OPS, and you would be like, the OPS tells us nothing about their ability to get on base. And it would be like, or tells us nothing about their ability to get RBIs, or tells us nothing about their ability to hit for extra bases. And it's like, no, that's wrong. Like, yes, OPS isn't telling us the individual things. We don't know how much of this is made up by, because this is a combined stat. It's a sabermetrics thing, and it's a combined stat that is effectively trying to tell us how good they are at hitting as an offensive player, that sort of thing. So it's combining different stats. Like, okay, how much do they hit for power? How much do they hit? That sort of thing. But it's a combined one number thing. And so is SR. But like, if you tell me the OPS, no, I do have some inference of their ability to get hits, to get on base, to get that sort of thing. Just like I do have some inference of their mechanical ability. Like, if you tell me that their OPS is 800, yeah, okay, I have a pretty good idea of what their on base percentage is. Now, I don't exactly know what it is, but I have a pretty good idea of, how much they're able to hit for power, that sort of thing. Just like with the SR, I have a pretty good idea of what a 4-3's mechanical skill is going to look like. Is it perfect? No, but I know the number can't be 0 because they can't be at 4.3 with their mechanical skill being 0. And I also know, and if we put mechanical skill on a 0 to 10 scale, I know that their mechanical skill really can't be 5 either because they really just can't get to 4.3 with this being it. And same thing here. If their OPS is up in the like 800s or something like that, I know that they're not going, okay, well, their batting average is 150. Like, I know that that's not the case because it's just not going to work. Their batting average is going to be at least like 250 type thing. That's fair. It is within a fairly broad range. Right, right. Um, Similar to statistics, you cannot tell the full story based on just a number without context. If you don't look between the lines, you fail to recognize the player's individual strengths. Right, you do have to actually get what their individual strengths are. You do have to look, but the thing is, do you actually know which of their individual strengths are going to win you the match that's coming up, the match between Shanghai and Shock? Do you actually know whether winning this next match is going to be more dependent on their mechanics being a little bit better, their positioning being a little bit better, their communication being a little bit better? Do you know which of these is going to be more important for your upcoming match? You probably don't because the match is so complicated. Even if you're a great coach, you probably don't know which. Now, it gets more complicated than that still because you can go, hey, we want 2 really strong communicators on our team. Like, we want everyone to have the best mechanics we possibly can, but we're willing to compromise a tiny, tiny bit because we want strong communication on, like, really strong communication on 2 out of our 6 players on our starting roster. So we'll make a tiny bit of a compromise here. And that's the sort of thing where it could come into, okay, fine. So we're looking at it some way like that. Heck no, you just want the person with the highest average efficiency. Exactly, exactly. Question 3. Does an educator's skill rating matter? Why would skill rating accurately measure an educator's effectiveness or knowledge if it already fails to give relevant insights about players? Um, Again, I don't fully agree with this part, and I think you agree with what I said here, so we probably have a little bit of a twist on that, but okay. In the community, educators are often asked about their SR because it's seen as proof that a coach's information works. But skill rating can vary dramatically based on personal situation and fails to even tell us if players are skilled with pieces of mechanics or tactical understanding. Of course, it fails to reliably indicate an educator's knowledge and ability. Right, that's not really surprising. The role of an educator, coach, or content creator and player are radically different. All good educators must deeply understand the game and effective teaching. Sure, teaching is going to be part of it. Someone's SR tells you absolutely nothing about their ability to teach other people in terms of are they at all efficient at teaching? We need a teaching efficiency. No. Okay, we don't. Team coaches also must know coaching skills, leadership, and health practices, mental and physical. Some of them, like between the coaching staff, you have to know those things. If you have one coach who knows basically nothing about mental and physical practice, but say they're your strategic or mental and physical stuff, but say they're your strategic coach, you can probably get away with that. You might have a specific mental coach or a trainer for the team or something like that. Your head coach needs a little bit of all of these things because they've got to be able to sort of recognize what's good and bad, or they need to be able to engage with the rest of their coaching staff. Okay. And obviously, if a coach is the only coach on the team, the head coach, they've got to have some of all of that stuff. And if they don't, it'll hurt their efficiency rating as a coach if they don't take care of their team's mentals well, or if they, don't understand micro game and can't really help their players get better in that context. Like all these things will hurt or help a coach, sure. While content creators also must understand rhetoric, marketing, and social presence. Okay. A player, in contrast, must be able to rapidly apply their hero efficiently into a variety of contexts. An educator can understand how to apply heroes to varied contexts and understand efficient gameplay without being capable of applying it rapidly themselves. Right, because training these things takes habit practice. It takes habit forming. Like even if your educator is mechanically good and your educator could be mechanically amazing, they still won't have trained and built up the habits on the heroes that you play necessarily. Like, yes, they're a 4.4 Genji player, but that doesn't mean that they've trained Doomfist or Mei or Reinhardt or Hammond or Zen at all. And those, you have to actually like build habits. It's not just your mechanics are good. You actually have to build these habits and ingrain into yourself when you go for right clicks versus left clicks. The coach may know, but they just haven't ingrained it, so they don't do it automatically at the pace that it needs to be done in a 4.4 game, or even a 3.7 game, or even a 3.2 game necessarily, because even if they're mechanically good, they haven't trained that habit. Their transcendences are too slow, not because they're mechanically bad, but because they haven't trained that specific habit. Can definitely agree there. You'll probably make some more tweaks after this. Banana Split says, "Hey Temporal, how long did you play Overwatch when you played it, and what was your peak SR if you played comp?" I mean, I'm not going to answer that question, Banana Split, because I actually think it's incredibly important that we have some educators out there, coaches out there who were successful, who don't share their SR, because it gives cover to less experienced coaches or lower SR coaches who are going, hey, we're doing this and don't want to constantly be fielding off SR questions. Like the reason that Kessel is having this discussion, not the reason, but part of what drove this discussion from Kessel, and they said that in their post, is, hey, it's foolish to be asking educators what their SR is. It doesn't matter. And like the truth is, I could say that I have a really low SR and it mostly wouldn't hurt me. It would probably hurt me some if I had a really low SR and I was public about that. But that mostly wouldn't hurt me because I'm established enough and because I have a brand and because I coached in contenders very successfully. But most people don't have that luxury. So I want to give them cover because I have worked with people that are perfectly qualified to coach in contenders or very high level collegiate, and their SRs are in like the gold, silver type territory. So like I want to give them cover. So let's just pretend I'm bottom 500 bronze. I'm good with that one. I've been complaining on the forums for months trying to get the devs to implement an SR system for teachers. Funny stars, Phil. Funny. Uh, Jane's big selling point in Overwatch community was that he got a GM with many heroes and all roles. Yeah. That was one of the selling points, but that was to a very couple things going on there. Jane did it at a time when the game was much, much easier, and it really was. Like, the game was much easier back in 2016 than it is in 2021 in terms of people are just better now than they were, and I sincerely doubt he could do that again, truth be told. But the other thing that you run into is we didn't have good educational content, and there weren't very many good coaches back then, and the good coaches were not sharing out. Most of the professional teams at the time, like, oh, how did you get your coach? Well, either he came over from another game to coach, and we kind of don't really trust him because he's, he hasn't proven anything to us yet. Or, well, he was our VOD recorder, and eventually we said, yeah, you can have the title of coach, and maybe we'll listen to him, maybe we don't, that sort of thing. Like, that was the time. So at the time when Jane struck gold and became successful was a very kind of shallow point for coaching in Overwatch's history, which is not me saying that Jane is some terrible coach. I think Jane was honestly a reasonable pick when he got picked up for Owl. The truth is, Jane was about as good as some of the other pieces that they could have picked as a coach. I'm not saying he was the best. He most certainly wasn't, but he was about as good. He was a replacement level coach, effectively. For those that don't know what that means, that's a, hey, you'd get this and you'd expect to win an average number of games. He was that, but he brought with him more fans to the org that picked him up, so he made sense. I think he was a reasonable choice for that. But anyway, the selling point there, yes, he grew effectively by doing that, and that was cool, but people were always going to judge more harshly, or were always going to judge more on your SR in the beginning. That shouldn't really be the case now, and it especially shouldn't be the case for people who have resumes. If you are going, hey, I want to coach a team and you have no experience, or you want to coach a player and you have no experience, yeah, that's sort of like asking for your SR is sort of like asking a coach for their high school, not their high school diploma, but like their high school GPA. Like, what was your high school GPA? Well, maybe that makes sense if this is your first job out of high school and you don't have any college and you don't have any, you don't have any work experience and you don't have that. But if you've gone and worked at 3 other jobs, or you've gone through college and some potential employer asks you for your high school GPA, you should politely say, F you, and leave. Because that's not relevant information anymore. That's foolish. Like, when it's a bad measurement, but when it was the only thing that was there, maybe it made sense because there's just nothing else to go on. But as soon as they've done any other coaching, it's like, what's your high school GPA? What are you talking about? What's my high school GPA? I took this Plat team up to Masters. They went from a Scrim SR of 2,400 to a Scrim SR of 3,700. Okay, then this is now what you're curious about, not what was their SR, that sort of thing. But Jane didn't do those things, and actually, if you looked at Jane, once Jane had his channel and had done a bunch of coaching there, that was fine. But if I remember, Jane did help an Australian contenders team, and they did very poorly. That makes sense. Like, being a contenders coach takes a lot of time, and he didn't really remove time from his content creation when he did that. So, like, that doesn't really bother me. He did other coaching, and he also did some private hidden coaching for some contenders teams like New York Excelsior, their academy team, things like that. Starsfield says, I haven't been asked my SR in ages, but that's a good idea to just not say it for the sake of others. Exactly. Teaching needs other type of skills than doing the thing. Right. Okay. Okay. Continuing here. A player, in contrast, must be able to rapidly apply their hero efficiently into. Excuse me. A player in contrast must be able to rapidly apply their hero efficiency into a variety of contexts. An educator can understand how to apply heroes to varied contexts and to understand efficient gameplay without being capable of applying it rapidly themselves. Right. Training habits, as well as mechanics, as well as a lot of things. The rapid application in real time requires habit building, reflexes, mechanical ability, experience, and lots of time. Understanding doesn't equal ability to execute, especially when issues like loss of reflex from aging and lack of consistent time for practice can affect performance. Right. This does not mean there is no correlation between a player's skill rating and the quality of their advice. That's also true. A high-ranked player must have some understanding of efficiency to climb, even if they cannot teach it effectively or lead. That is true, though sometimes players will surprise you. Sometimes players will surprise you not on that specifically, but on things like that, where you're like, wait, you're a mid to high GM level tank and you don't understand engagement timing? How can that possibly be the case? And it will surprise you sometimes. But hey, okay. All low-ranked players lack efficiency in some regards, but their understanding of the game and efficient play can easily surpass their real-time execution and rank. Bad advice from a bronze player doesn't become good advice when it's reposted by a top 500 player. That's true. The value of advice or information exists regardless of the person posting it and their credentials. Right. So even if there may be a correlation, you should not be using a skill rating to judge an educator's competence or information. And that's in bold, and that's important, and that is generally correct. And I stand by that, and that's why I don't share my SR in a lot of ways as cover for other people so that they can not have to share their skill rating. Skill rating cannot qualify or disqualify a person as a reliable source. Right. And this same thing should be used in education, by the way. Someone having a master's, having a doctorate, anything like that does not mean that they can or cannot challenge information that comes out of academia. Like just because someone says something and is a professor and someone else says something and is an undergrad or is, just has a high school diploma doesn't mean that the person who just has the high school diploma is wrong. Like that is how things work. Anyone, that is like the scientific method, the heart of science is anyone can challenge something. Anyone can be like, hey, if I follow the steps right, if I do this right, it doesn't matter what you have. That is how knowledge building works. And that's ultimately what coaches are doing too. They're doing knowledge building. They're doing these things. They're solving it. They're going, wait, does this work? Does this work? Does this work? And they're coming up with better and better solutions. Okay. So even if there may be a correlation, you should not be using skill rating to judge an educator's competence or information. Skill rating cannot qualify or disqualify a person as reliable in source. We've encountered an epistemological problem. How do we know information is valuable and true if an educator's skill rating means nothing? Right. I mean, you're dealing with the argument from authority issue, and the argument from authority issue is always one of, okay, you don't want to trust something just because it's from an authority, the authority being, oh, well, they have a high SR or something like this, and it always takes us back to, well, I'm curious where you're going to go with this, but it always takes us back to, well, you don't necessarily want to trust it just because a lot of people say it either, because we have lots of misinformation type things that are wrong, upvoted by lots of people on places like Overwatch University. So a lot of people saying it doesn't make it true either. So what does actually make it true? Well, what actually makes it true is proving that it works. Like, okay, we'll go with this. This hypothesis is the strongest. This one has survived the longest. This one hasn't been disproven, or if it has been disproven, it's been retweaked and adjusted, and now it hasn't been able to be disproven. That's sort of how we get our way through here. And okay, do they have lots of good hypotheses? Well, you aren't always going to run their experiments, so it becomes a tough problem of, well, who do you trust? Because if you're not trusting them because they're an expert, and you're not trusting them because lots of people say to trust them, how do you get to a point where you can trust them? That sort of is always the conundrum with knowledge, and we sort of ultimately get back to, well, I think this person is smart because I agree with them on a lot of things, which is kind of how a place that we get to a knowledge. But I'm opening a whole can of worms there, so maybe Chad will have fun with that. Funny game buster, but it's bottom 500. Get it right. Okay. Oh, we're actually going to get into it. There are several main ways to confirm information's reputability. Information should make logical sense. It should be defensible. It should be able to stand up to debate. Yes. A professional coach doesn't care about the writer's reputation because they can judge the content's quality using their own knowledge and experience. Right. If you lack the expertise to judge information at face value, an author usually provides reasoning or examples that you can use to deduce if the information is sound. Correct. If an author doesn't provide reasoning or something seems incorrect, ask them for clarification and engage in civil conversation. This can help both parties develop their understanding further and expose logic or lack of it. It can. The problem is you do run into disproportionate amounts of time where debating something on Reddit is really inefficient and it costs a lot of time for a coach, an educator, a content creator, whatever, to go, well, let me explain to you while you're wrong. Oh, you come back and are still confused. Well, let me explain to you while you're wrong, why you're wrong. Well, oh, you come back and you're still confused. And that sort of becomes it takes a lot of time to do these things. And unfortunately, you don't want to have people running away going, oh, well, it takes too much time all the time. But there is some level of people aren't necessarily running from a conversation by refusing to continue to engage in it, which creates another bit of a problem. They're just safeguarding their time because they've explained it 50 times already. And they might explain it to their players who are either giving them money or they work for as a team and they're going to work with and they're going to see the fruits of them getting better because their team is going to get better and they're going to get the tournament placings and such. But there's a little bit of a problem with this one specifically of, oh, we'll just debate it. Well, debate takes time and not everyone has that. But hopefully we've got a solution for that. Temporal's SR is 1. His Scarf's SR is 5001. He's boosted by his Scarf. Sounds right. Information should be endorsed by reputable sources. Okay. A person with an established reputation in the community, such as an experienced coach, can assure the quality of the work by putting their own reputation on the line. There's some truth to that, yeah. The reputation of someone who agrees with low-quality works will fall pretty quickly. Sure. A person's qualification are based on experience with applied education, results from their teaching, logical soundness, and endorsement from their own peers or predecessor coaches. Sure. You can ask them directly to review the content, like Spiolo and Temporal do. Those are things that we do. That is something that Temporal is doing right now. Or just ask them questions about the information you see. A qualified source backing information will assure you that the information is reliable, improve your own expertise at judging information, and contribute to the author's future credibility and reputation. Or tear it down if they start endorsing garbage. Okay. Information should be able to be cross-checked for accuracy. Right. Even if a qualified educator does not directly endorse the information, you can compare it to information from qualified educators in the community. Information that matches across multiple reputable sources generally holds true. While cross-checking can't help in the case of cutting-edge information and revolutionary understanding, it can help you in most situations and improve your own expertise. Sure. Question 3A. Does an educator's skill rating matter? Nope. The information exists separate from the person presenting it, and while you might be tempted to use it to judge the information's quality, it fails in that regard too. There are much better ways to determine for information quality, such as logic, cross-checking, and asking questions, and requesting reviews from qualified educators with more experience than yourself. Sure. Question 3B. Should you care about an educator's skill rating? Obviously not. You could care about relevant experience, like if they were a professional team coach, but even that can't tell us about their knowledge or effectiveness at teaching. Right. Some coaches were successful coaches because they were friends with the right players and they were able to pull the best players to their team, and then their team won while they sat on the couch and watched TV. Ultimately, nothing's perfect as a metric. It's best to separate content from the educator and judge content by its own merit. Good content can come from unconventional sources, and poor content from well-known individuals can be naively followed by people never questioning what they're consuming. It's almost like you're calling a couple specific things out there, but I won't name them. I hope this post promotes discussion in the community about how players should understand the game and what a person's rank really means. Its temptation to simplify everything to tips and tricks or best practices may make information easy to consume, but comes at the cost of developing deeper understanding of the game and the world around us. I'm Anima. If you found this content worthwhile, feel free to join my Discord server, link, where I announce new content and chat. My streaming and content creation on hiatus due to computer hardware limits, but when Overwatch 2 comes out, I'm aiming to either stream or produce content more. Thanks. Okay, so that's Anima. We've got Anima in chat here if you guys have questions for me or him. I'm going to sort of sum up my response to the main points here one more time just because I think it's interesting. Then we'll catch up on chat. Then we'll get into the comments here because I know this was a controversial post, as Anima has told us here. But if you guys have questions for me or Anima, throw them up in chat. Okay, so I think this should make logical sense. This is science. This is, can you verify it yourself if you have the right tools? And this is the best way to verify things, but it costs a lot of time. can be endorsed by sources. This is somewhat good, but ultimately this is still an argument from authority. Your argument from authority is just coming from sources that you think have authority. So, like myself or Spilo is listed here. Those are ultimately arguments from authority. Hopefully, however, you've been able to verify things that these people have said yourself, and because you've verified things that they've said yourself, you're able to go, okay, I'm more willing to trust that, because you've applied in this direction this to these people already, you're more trustworthy of what they say. So this only really becomes useful if you've done some of that yourself to these sources, or to things that these sources have said, and if they get bad on it, you chuck them out, that sort of thing. And you guys should also do this with your news, for example. It's really hard to be like, hey, this is what's happening. This is a good source. This is a good source of information, maybe for education, maybe for learning about what's going on in the world, maybe for anything. You should always be going, hey, okay, did they say something that you can verify yourself? And in the Overwatch world, for example, we saw that there were just factually incorrect things that came out surrounding Ginguri, Ellie, etc. from certain video game news publications. So you'd look at those and go, wait, I was close enough to those things to know that they're factually incorrect. Well, that throws your whole source into the credibility toilet, because you go, okay, you guys have to rebuild credibility before we can trust you here. And again, that's tough, but you have to go, were you close enough to know something about that? And you should do that with all things. But anyway, sorry, tangent, that's fine. And then information should be cross-checked for accuracy. Right, cross-checking it yourself, good thing. Does an educator's skill rating matter? No, of course not. Okay, so as we go back to our main points here, our sort of main summary is, why is Overwatch fundamentally the same? And we get into, does it play differently at different lengths? Not really. The real answer here is players are more efficient, you get punished faster at higher ranks, that sort of thing. But really, you have to recognize the situation that's actually happening at the different ranks to be successful. That's not really the game playing differently at different ranks. It's different situations can come up at any rank, in most situations, at almost any rank anyways, and you'd have to handle those. That said, the situations start looking more similar because there's a more closely shared understanding of how the game should be played as you go higher up in the ranks, and that can create some confusion when higher level players play down. Well, applying game sense, apply at low ranks. This is really the same thing we just said. Can player improve using stuff aimed for coaching aimed at higher level players? Yes. What does a person's skill rating tell us about them? It's a sabermetric. It's a combined stat, effectively. It's a combined stat of their efficiency, as Anima puts it here, at winning ladder games. And yeah, it doesn't tell you the individual stats that make it up, but it does give you a pretty good read on how effective they're going to be at winning ladder games. And how effective they're going to be at winning ladder games is a pretty good proxy for how effective they're going to be at winning organized play games. Does an educator skill rating matter? No is the real answer. Information should make sense. Yes, this is the best. This is science. Should be endorsed by a reputable source. A source is only reputable to you if you trust it, or you trust it because you've been able to verify this through number one, or other people have verified this through number one, and you've verified what those other people have said through number one. Information should be cross-checked for accuracy. This is kind of going back to number one. Skill rating doesn't matter. Yep. Should you care about the skill rating? No, you really shouldn't. Okay. So let's catch up on chat here, because I think that gives my views here. Okay, so Lucid said Overwatch coaching is not lucrative at all. I should have went into soccer coaching instead. Yeah, that's probably true. It's less lucrative than other things. Part of the issue with that is there's room for less players to corner the market on it, or it's harder to corner the market on it, however you want to think about it, because when you're teaching a physical sport or when you're doing things like that, the internet Like you can teach it in your community, in your town, in your thing, and you've only got a couple things that you're competing with, and that helps stabilize what the price is going to be. When you're doing Overwatch coaching, it's a video game that people play online. Of course it's going to be done online, and if it's going to be done online, you are going to competing all around the world with people who can sell their time at a rate that works for their region, which may be cheaper than the state, country, whatever you live in, which becomes a little bit of a competition issue for you. For everyone, really. As well as there's unlimited competition because it's not okay, there's 8 people that are qualified to teach soccer in your community and 3 of them are actually doing it. It's okay, there's a few hundred people that are qualified to teach Overwatch and 20 are doing it, 30 are doing it, 50 are doing it, whatever the case may be. Well, that's a bigger number, and people can literally go to any of them unless someone actually caps out their time, which 1 or 2 do in this world, and just 1 or 2. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, Magdalena says, to be honest, I think it's Overwatch's version of You Must Listen to Me because my experience, I have access to facts, which correlates with truth, but doesn't override measurable facts. You want that scarf then? Fair enough. Okay. Okay. If I argued something was true because so and so who was very good said it, my professors would kill you. They should. They absolutely should. I think point three is more likely than point two. Some creators just don't get noticed. That being said, Overwatch coaching community is relatively small, so they tend to get noticed eventually. That is true. It is relatively small. Unfortunately, its cap is also relatively small, and we've seen that. The total amount of eyeballs you can get on it is somewhat limited. This is not a huge subreddit, and the most educational Overwatch channels aren't that large either. Which some of that is a marketing issue of those content creators are not doing the best things they could be doing to market to apply to a bigger audience even with the information they have, but some of that really is there's a limited interest. There's a much bigger market for telling people they're better than they are and it's their teammates' fault, and this one hero picking this one hero or doing this one thing will rank you up as an SR than actually telling people, "Hey, getting better at Overwatch, like getting better at anything worthwhile, takes a lot of work. It takes focus. It takes dedication. You're trying to get better at something that other people play for 20, 30, 40 hours a week. And if you want to get better faster than them, that's going to be hard work." Mm-hmm. Yeah, it assumes the authority has been qualified through their logic and results and cross-checking. It layers up. Yes, it has to. With the amount of work some tier 2 coaches put, they could have gotten professional soccer coaching qualifications already instead of having to kiss Owl teams' butts. You'll notice I don't. You'll notice I don't kiss Overwatch League teams' butts. I went, hey, this is more profitable, more consistent. I'm in charge of my own hours. Yeah. But most of them did not go that route. And networking is incredibly important in basically anything in life, guys. There's always someone always has the ring that needs to be kissed, unfortunately. Okay, if you have a totally unconnected question, Carolina, go ahead and throw it up in Ask Temporal. I will be doing an Ask Temporal probably on Wednesday. I know I said I'd do it over the weekend, but I didn't announce it. I'll put an actual date up for it, but we're going to be doing an Ask Temporal where I cover mostly non-Overwatch questions in the short future here. I'll announce a date, so get those questions loaded up in there because I'll just do a video and I'll go over a bunch of them. And I'd like this one to be focused on more non-Overwatch stuff. We'll do a more Overwatch-focused one in the future, but this one should be more non-Overwatch type stuff so we can get into, if we want, health, finance, we can get into dating, all those sorts of other things that we sometimes get distracted and cover on this channel. Kind of joined late, TLDR. No, it's more than your rank doesn't matter in coaching. Anyone can teach properly. Not anyone can teach properly. That's definitely not true. There's an efficiency. You could design an efficiency rating for coaching, but obviously we're not going to. But no, I'd say that's one of the TLDRs, but I'd say there's this is more of a what does SR actually tell us about people? Like there's three main points here, and we sort of had them here. Does Overwatch play differently at different ranks? What does a person's skill rating really tell us about him? Does an educator's skill rating matter? And I'd say these are their own sort of separate theses. I don't think these all drain into three, though these two certainly do in some ways lead to three. Is there a general diva guide like you did with the other heroes? I want to know what the priorities are as diva. There's probably not one right now. I'll make one eventually. Top 500 Zarya once said you should never take off angles on Zarya. Right, Lucid? Isn't it amazing how they say that? I was talking about a main tank who just had nothing in terms of engagement timing, and it's just like, oh my goodness, how are you at this level? And you've got this top 500. So it's amazing. It's amazing. Uh, Val asks how harmful are Fiverr coaches. Some of them are just normal diamond players with no coaching or teaching experience. Starsfield says I was a Fiverr coach. Gamebuster says at Val, there's this temporal guy on Fiverr too. Isn't temporal on Fiverr? I am. Yeah, I have. I mean, it's more marketing, guys. Like, it's not where most of my business comes from by any means. Way more gets filtered through my channel, and I don't promote my Fiverr because Fiverr takes a cut, and it's a cut that just doesn't make sense. And I've actually since upped my prices on Fiverr, so Fiverr isn't even a terribly good place to go to get my coaching. My Discord is a better place to go for that. You can get bundle deals, things like that. But I put it out there because it's more marketing. It's another place to get it out there, and that is one of the ways to work here. You're late to the party, but what about being more aggressive in Silver because Silver Widow isn't as scary as GM Widow? Right, but in theory, you could also determine a few minutes into a match that your GM Widow isn't very scary either because they don't have good aim. So in theory, you play as aggressively as you can get away with basically always, and you also basically always are learning about the actual match that you're in as you're in it to make adjustments. Your question is Overwatch related? You can still throw it up there and ask Temporal. It's fine. Or you can throw it up in Overwatch questions and I'll tackle it in the next one. How'd my collegiate homecoming games go? Well, we are now 5-2 in the homecoming one. So yeah, that's what you specifically asked about, not Nace Star League or the other ones there. And our losses are to Redbirds, who are the best team in collegiate and the best team in North American contenders, and to Northwood, who is the second best team in collegiate and can also field a team that is completely made up of players that are in or have been in contenders. So little bit annoying that we caught literally the two best teams, not like the best team and the third best team, the second best team and the fifth best team. We literally caught the two best teams in our matchups in Swiss here. So we're on our last life now. We can't lose any more matches. That said, we shouldn't catch any more matches that, are basically beyond the team's ability to win. The team probably is a top 12 to 8 team, 8 to 15 team, something in that range in terms of reality. But the Swiss bracket that gets run for homecoming, like the Swiss bracket that gets run for open division, isn't perfect because even though it does 10 rounds, it only reseeds every 2 rounds, which makes it less efficient at accurately splitting up your team. So that's a little bit annoying, but that's okay. If we catch Harrisburg, which there is a possibility because Harrisburg have the same record of us as us, because I think they lost to maybe Bay State and Northwood, something like that. I could be mixing up which two teams they lost to, but if we catch them, that could maybe not be the end of our tournament life. I mean, we could beat them. I just think that we probably wouldn't win that one, if I'm being honest. So little bit of a concern there if we catch them. Anyone else is winnable. Some of them would be very hard wins. Many of them would not be very hard wins. And if we were to lose 3 matches, it would be very hard to still make group stages. It would probably still be doable, but there's probably only 1 to 3 teams who would do so, and you'd have to go through a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen teams that all had a 7-3 record, something like that. Splat doing his trolling could be. Yeah, no, I'm there. You can find me. More timid footage. There you go. Uh huh. They're all separate topics about ranks. Wanted to just try to go for the one big discussion, did all, rather than split it up. That's Kessel. Yep. Moom is on Fiverr for Overwatch coaching as well. Yep, and so is Wizard. There's lots of names you'd recognize there, but there's also people who don't have any presence either in the professional coaching community outside of Fiverr or in the content community who, kind of were first early movers on Fiverr and therefore have hundreds and hundreds of transactions and therefore get recommended. And yeah, they're just, okay, it's a top 500 player or it's a diamond player who has a lot of transactions, things like that. I won't really sell my time at the rates that some of the other people on Fiverr will. So we're sort of in I don't drive a ton of traffic through Fiverr. I intentionally decreased my rates for a while to get some more traffic, to get some traffic so Fiverr would review me more, but it's just not an efficient place. And honestly, I'm considering raising my rates again because the Fiverr ones are kind of a headache. Can we get a discount on temporal coaching on Fiverr? No, you'll get better rates here on my Discord. That's exactly why I left Fiverr too. I hate that they take part of your tips too, and the whole level system is dumb. There's so much into it that just irked me that it could go on forever. Yeah, I agree, Starsfeld. We have the same record as you guys, and we're not a top 12 team. Yep. Your losses are also not to the two best teams in collegiate. So, that's how that goes sometimes. It's life. Okay, let's do a quick refresh here and see how things are going in the comments here, because we have some highly upvoted comments. Okay, most upvoted or best comment. That's not necessarily most upvoted because they downvote things that are or they move down things that are controversial, even if they have a high total number of upvotes and less downvotes. You can find things that would be upvoted like 60 times instead of 42 that would be lower if they have a couple downvotes. But here we go. This is really nicely written, but it does sort of feel like your proposal is fundamentally Overwatch is the same game at different SR levels, and you have to play as effectively as possible with the resources you have available. These are certainly both true, but I don't think that means what you're proposing it means. Okay. If the context changes with rank, then the advice is appropriate within one context, might not be appropriate in another. No. I can already see the fallacy he's making. It doesn't change within the rank. One silver game is not the same as the next silver game, and one Masters game is not the same as the next Masters game. The games are different, so that's what's being missed here. If the context changes with rank, then the advice is appropriate within one context, might not be applicable in another, because some advice is bound to be context dependent, right? My thinking has always been that high rank players give fantastically valuable advice on positioning, technique, judgment, and prioritization. Sometimes, but a lot of the positioning that they'll point you to is defensive and as it should be, but they understand that they're not just going to hold that back defensive position forever. They're going to walk up and hit the off angle nade. It's not a permanent thing that their positioning moves in the fight. They put you in a position and then your Rhine go around to the corner and you say, no, this GM Anna told me that this is where I was supposed to sit and it's my Reinhardt's fault for getting eliminated. Whereas their Reinhardt goes, no, the GM Reinhardt told me that when we have this cooldown and shield and health advantage, I'm supposed to push, or if we get eliminations, I'm supposed to push up and go get staggers. Why didn't my Anna come with me? And you guys see the problem there. You see it, right? Okay. And these are useful to learn from high-ranking games, but high-ranking games also set up expectations of team interactions which don't appear in the lower ranks. Right, and you have to adjust your expectation, but you'd also, again, adjust your expectation in that lower rank. If you go in for your Nano Blade and you don't get your Nano from your Anna, you're going to go, wait, what? She had a sight line on me. I specifically checked to make sure she had a sight line on me. She didn't do it, whatever. Or you're 90% to Nano, and she Winston's your Orisa, and you go, huh? My expectation was that I was going to get that, but now my expectations change. I evolve them as the game goes on here. Which is why I think that people, and that happens in higher level games than you'd think, which is why I think that people advise a different and fundamentally more selfish play style lower down on the ladder. The people who play in, say, silver and hope to have a coherent team that they see in the VODs end up being disappointed and frustrated. Well, that does happen. You do hope that they'll play in a certain way and they don't, and you have to adjust to that reality. But that reality is also not always present in Masters. It's really not. Remember, guys, GM games regularly had 3 DPS in them back before we had roll lock. Like, that was a thing that regularly happened even in GM because, nope, everyone's out for themselves. 3 DPS and Hog. Lovely. And the way to prevail is to ignore all of the high floating gameplay and solely concentrate on your own game. Well, it is to do that, yeah. Okay. I think the point you're making at the end is essentially what people mean by Overwatch plays differently at different ranks. In lower ranked games, I can just walk up on the backline as Tracer and farm. The higher I go, the more likely people are to react to sounds, have better aim, and peel. I have to play differently in order to play well. I have to set up engagements and be opportunistic. Sort of. Why is this here? Because you got downvotes. I do not like that they sort by best rather than top. I don't like that that's the default, but I'm going to leave it that way because that's how normal people see it. Because again, there's 3 votes on this, there's 9 votes on this. Whatever. And these are both the same second stage comment here. Okay. Similarly, when Ryan Winston and Zarya at high ranks, I can expect Zarya to bubble as I engage because 99.99% of the time they do, so I expect to bubble. What are you calling higher ranks? Because that's not true. They do it a lot more often, but they definitely don't 99.99% of the time, even if you're actively tracking their cooldown as Winston. There are things your teammates and enemies will just do as you get better, so you have to play differently as a reaction to that. Sure, it's a core of the game. Sure, at its core, it's the same game, but you truly so have to play differently at different ranks. So the point that Anima is making it, you know what? I'll let Anima make the point. Anima makes the point, so we'll do that. The key distinction I'm trying to make, and as you've said, it's an incredibly fine line, these expectations of context aren't actually tied to the rank of self. A higher ranked player won't always receive more resources. The low ranked player can be playing with the same teammates occasionally who provide resources. If you tell a player to play according to their rank, they start generalizing into a locked playstyle rather than trying to recognize each situation as they encounter it. Right. They'll be playing selfishly when they have a team that actually could be beneficial or entirely disregard the coherent team, or the high ranked player will consistently expect resources that genuinely won't always be there, leading to them feeding. True. The key, and you'll notice that players adjust to this. Like, being a main tank with an off tank that has no idea what they're doing in a GM game absolutely sucks, but it does happen. It does happen, and you just have to deal with it. And the good GM players, the 4-4, the 4-6 GM main tank players, do adjust. And do they still sometimes lose those games? Absolutely. But they adjust and they don't lose them as hard, or they make them close enough that if something else goes their way, they can win them. Because you can play your main tank with an off tank who has no idea what they're doing. You play it differently to still maximize your value, and you won't get as much value as a main tank that was getting good synergy from their off tank. But you play in a different way, and you get better synergy than you would playing still assuming you were getting off tank synergy. The key emphasis is that while ranks have, and you do this even in high GM games, the key emphasis is that while ranks have tendencies to need certain playstyles because of the efficiency difference, you cannot say that a rank is entirely one playstyle. It makes it much more useful to understand how to adapt your playstyle rather than telling someone to play a certain way. Hope this explains the process a bit more. Good insights. Okay? You hope I read the super downvoted ones? Oh, we can go do that next. Sure. Let's finish this one here, and then let's get into some super downvoted ones. Well, that mindset, this is a response to Kessel here. While that mindset may seem better for giving advice, the fact of the matter is the game is very different from low to high ranks. I mean, it's played at a different pace. There's efficiency differences using Kessel's terminology. I've jumped between silver and diamond several times, and you have to assume a different playstyle between ranks. No, that's not actually true. You should always have been able to play in multiple playstyles, and you might use different ones more in different situations. For example, if I see a Genji as Ana in silver, I usually don't call him out. I know they likely aren't good at Genji because he's in silver, and I know it'll likely hurt my team more to create chaos with a call than to take the time and deal with him yourself. Okay. If I see Genji as Ana in diamond, I call him out and move towards my team. I trust that Genji can eliminate you and your team will protect you. Uh, why? That's a weird change that you've made. I'm perfectly fine with you calling out the Genji, especially calling out Genji 1 after you've double tapped him in silver. Um, I'm also perfectly fine with you taking your shot at him in diamond because I don't want him to get close to you. Like, you could sit on top of your team. You could also not sit on top of your team and poke him so that he can't stage appropriately on you. That's just weird. I see. Of course, to your point, I'll just adjust how dangerous I consider Genji after I see how well the particular game plays out. But as you put in bold, differences in ranks are because of lower ranked players being inflexible in playstyles because they lack the mechanics, experience, or tactical understanding to adapt. As you get to silver and especially bronze, these issues become more pronounced, and usually multiple of them are at play. Sure. A player lacking experience, lacking tactical experience, or being inflexible won't be able to adjust to the situation quickly, if at all. And players lacking mechanics won't be able to win the fight. Oh, this doesn't follow. This doesn't lead back and explain why you're right. When giving advice to a lower ranked player, it's not always helpful to tell them even what's considered basic game knowledge at higher ranks. Take, for example, using speed boost as Lucio. Oh no. Oh no. In high ranks, it's his main strength, but in low ranks, your teammates are more prone to taking damage because they don't utilize cover well, they won't use the speed to take space well, and Lucio himself likely doesn't know how or have the mechanical skills to take space well. That's why, in my experience, Lucios and bronze and silvers tend to heal more, win more fights. They do! They do. It's from earlier in the video, guys. I knew this one was coming. Okay, the Lucio example. And he doesn't go further into it. So, this is still neither Lucio understanding how to play properly. If the Plat Lucio is on speed all the time, but his team uses it to get cover, his Reinhardt uses it to get on enemies faster and preserve resources, and the Silver Lucio uses heals all the time, and that helps the team more because it sustains them more, and they're not doing these things, neither of these Lucios are right. The correct thing to do was to go, these aren't like play style differences, so I guess you consider them that. The correct thing to do is actually be able to adjust between these two styles and go, oh, my team is actively rotating towards the opponents, I'll put on speed. My team should be rotating towards the opponents, but they aren't, I'll stay on heals. Oh, there's a Dragon Strike coming. I'm going to flip to speed immediately so that my team can get out of it. Oh, my team's not getting out of it. I guess I'll swap to heals so they survive for another instant. It's not good, but it's the best I can make of the situation. That sort of thing. Like, you react to what your team is actually doing. You react to the actual situation. And these actual situations of your Reinhardt, you sometimes will find in silver that your Reinhardt pushes and walks at the enemy to go swing at them. And you will sometimes find in plat that your Reinhardt just stands there, in which case, yes, you are better heal botting for him. You've like disproven your own point in this, and with like the most common example I use to prove the point. It's kind of hilarious. There's a reason metas are different. There is a reason the metas are different between the different ranks. They are. Differences in skill lead to differences in playstyle, lead to different metas, sure. Even if an individual might have different strengths, the average of 6 or even 12 players will balance that out into a very different game at different ranks. That's not untrue, but it doesn't buffer your point. To your point about what SR tells us, you're right that we can't use it to tell an individual's strength, weakness, or playstyle, but we can, especially at the extremes, use it to understand how the game as a whole will look. Slow or fast, that sort of thing, sure. Mechanically good or not, sure. Which heroes will be picked to a degree, and how certain characters can optimize their playstyles for that playstyle. You're considering metas playstyles, that's sort of where these things are bumping into each other. Metas as playstyles sort of thing, and metas aren't necessarily playstyles. Like metas, even when you go, okay, the meta right now is Zen, if we say the meta right now is Zen Ball, let's pretend we're in a Zen Ball meta and go, okay, this is what we have, this is the thing, and this isn't by itself a playstyle. Like, the playstyle is we're going to try to, because we have Zen Ball and you have Anna Winston, we're going to try to eliminate your Tracer because we have Discord Orb and Harmony Orb, whereas you have Anna who doesn't support Tracer as well. We're going to try to actually get eliminations on your Tracer, your Tracer, or your Sombra, or your Echo, or whatever the case is in this matchup, because that's a playstyle choosing to try to win this, versus we're going to try to set up to hard dive your Anna, versus we're going to set up to counter dive when your Tracer or Winston comes in. These are playstyle differences. Just picking the heroes isn't a playstyle. Like, oh, it's the meta. Well, no. I mean, and that's, yes, gets into how we define the term meta, because, yes, if we technically got into what meta really means, meta does mean how people are actually playing the game. Like, it's, that's what it is, but how we tend to use it in Overwatch and how it tends to get used in most games like this with choices is going to be around which heroes are being played, which items are being used, that sort of thing, and that's not really a play style. Uh-huh. Okay, let's look at some downvoted ones because I'm told those are interested. This post is basically you have to play optimally and get maximum value. This advice applies to every rank. Okay, that was less interesting. Let's scroll down here. Is this ours? I saw an educative stream. Oh, it's Spilo. Okay. We might come back to that one. Let's go find some downvotes. Do we have another Spilo? We do. Repost of a comment I made elsewhere because it needed to be said. I rarely comment on this subreddit nowadays, but I think this topic is extremely important, as I've noticed recently more and more well-meaning but misleading feedback being thrown around. The problem with different playstyles at every rank is that it completely ignores the individual problems and nuance that different players struggle with, which distracts from doing what's actually going to make you better in the long term with narratives that maybe cheese you some wins in the short term. Yeah, that's true. Improvement isn't about adapting a certain playstyle for every rank. It's a process of introspection, feedback, self-identification with the goal of improving your weakness and building better gameplay habits across the board. Most of these habits will adjust here and there as you climb, but usually they stay relatively the same in principle. Yeah, that's a good post. Okay, but let's find, actually that's a good enough post. Let's give that an upvote. Let's go ahead and find ourselves. Where are my downvoted ones? Okay, we'll go like. Controversial? No, controversial means they're getting up and down votes. I want my downvoted ones. I think I've been lied to. I trusted you. I trusted you, Starsfield. I'm not seeing any massive downvotes. I mean, a -2 type thing. We did this one already. Oh well. Okay, let's get ourselves back to this here. They're just way down at the bottom. You say that, but like they're not. They have upvotes now, if that's what you thought. You were just hoping there were some. Okay, that's fine. Okay, we'll find one or two more then, and then we'll do a final catch up on chat here. Kessel has a -3 downvote one. Well, that's unfortunate. Okay, congratulations. I'm sorry it happened. I'm sorry that it happened. Okay. Okay, so here we've got a highly upvoted one. I think I've come to the conclusion that this game is 80% positioning. It's not quite that, but positioning is really important. Map control is just that big a deal, which is why I'm stuck in bronze. Positioning does not at all come intuitive to me, and I cannot recognize when I am in or out of position. Yeah, I understand definitions, use high ground, use cover, but can't seem to apply it, especially when I am multitasking in the heat of battle. If you play more, you will get more familiar with just controlling your character, and as you get more familiar with simply controlling your character, you will be able to think about more. If you're still struggling to control your character after a while, it probably means you have your sensitivity way too high and you have no ability to control aim, or you've just never been thinking about your aim whatsoever. Once we get beyond that, cover and high ground are both good, but angles. The map guides that I put out are some of the most useful content for making people better at Overwatch. There's a few positions in Overwatch, positions as in roles, where that they're a little less helpful for than others, but for most things, they are absolutely amazing and one of the best things to help people climb, understand positioning better, understand how the game works from a map control standpoint. Uh-huh. I like to use the ulting McCree method for checking position. Imagine if every enemy suddenly became ulting McCree charging his ultimate. Would you be able to escape the ultimate or eliminate him before the lock-on occurred? Okay. But are you using new ulting McCree that charges ult faster? And the real answer is you can have cover taking up a third of your screen. That's perfectly fine. You don't have to ever really stand in the open unless you're rotating. And then you're not standing, you're rotating. So, okay. Ulting who? Okay. As a critique, I want my educators to take a complicated topic and make it simpler for me to understand and digest. Your post does exactly the opposite for me. You want candy. You want your history textbook to be a TikTok thing. I get it. Like, yes, educators should be making concepts simpler to you, and they do, truth be told, but there are limits. Could we do better than we do? Yes, but that better is probably like 20 to 30% better. It's not, we're going to give you 6-minute videos, 4-minute videos, that sort of thing. Learning is hard. Learning is work. Getting better at things is work. Question 1 essentially boils down to context dictates what efficient use of a hero looks like, but this has no relation to rank specifically. Except context does have a relation to rank. You will see a much different distribution of context at different ranks. I understand the broader point you're making. Example, better understanding of the game applies across a wide range of contexts and makes you better suited to handle the wider range, but I think you spent 2,000 words obfuscating a point you could have made in less than 200. I think he was anticipating objection, and he's trying to handle anticipated objection. And that's usually when word counts get a lot longer on something, it's because you're trying to handle anticipated objection and handle corner cases and things like that. That's how it works. Sorry. Likewise, question 2 and 3 could have easily boiled down to a few dozen words. That's fair. I was aiming to provide reasoning behind my claim so I wouldn't have to explain it repeatedly in the comments. Exactly. That's what you do when you're writing an essay. Like, if you're explaining something to someone and you have them there one-on-one, you can be simple in how you explain it. If you're explaining to people who aren't going to be able to have effective dialogue back with you, or you're explaining to a lot of people, you have to start covering some of the objections that different groups and different types of people will have. That's how writing works. Okay. In this community, if you post something only a paragraph, wrong, maybe that's supposed to be long, about how ranks do not in fact play differently, it's almost guaranteed of infinity downvotes. Okay, basically I'm showing my work, so to speak. Unfortunately, it didn't seem to go as planned because so few people read the post, leaving me in the same situation as if you just done the paragraph. And you have to keep explaining yourself, regardless of having covered the anticipated objection. Any good coaches with bronze SR that you know of? I mean, I'll pretend to be bottom 500 guys. Like, sure. One thing that all SR levels have in common is they don't have time to read this post. Seriously, how long did writing this take you? Come off of it. Like, you don't have time to read this post, but you have time to be on Reddit. Reddit, social media in general, is a time sink where you're going to waste a silly amount of time. Okay. No judgment, genuinely impressed. Oh, that's not true. Like, no. That was an attack, and this is you being like, no judgment, so you don't get called out on your attack. Not a fan of that. Okay. I'm looking for the downvoted one. Oh, here's the downvoted one. And this is in response to, okay, so we'll read this and then the response, then we'll wrap up with comments here. I disagree with most of what you're saying here. In a theoretical sense, sure, the game is the same at every SR and there's a correct way to play. The first example you give is counter to your own point, though. You say healbotting essentially only gets you so far, not past plat. I agree with this point, but you are needed to heal more because everyone takes more damage than they should. You know how else you can prevent people from taking more damage than they should? If you shoot at the, say, off-angling Zarya, let's go like this. Let's go like this. There's a Zarya over here, there's a Reinhardt right here, and then you have your own Reinhardt here and a McCree right here. If you shoot at this Zarya will retreat to cover, and cover is probably going to be her own Reinhardt. And then she doesn't have an angle. If you don't shoot at this Zarya will A, shoot at you, but even if she doesn't shoot at you, she will shoot around your Reinhardt and put more pressure on your Reinhardt than she would from here. That is how the game works. Same thing with Anna. If you just try to heal your Reinhardt up forever, that's cool and all, but if you'd first put 2 damage shots into Zarya and made her pop her personal bubble and then not get value from it ideally, she's then going to have to retreat because she can't stay out here without her personal bubble, and now your team is taking less damage because your Reinhardt shield can absorb some of this. Your Reinhardt can alternate between, your Reinhardt is able to swing, I should be writing in the other color here. Your Reinhardt is able to swing and then shield, and you heal him while he shields, instead of the Zarya being out here doing damage to him, so he swings once, and then he has to hard shield the whole time because you're healing him with your heal darts, but this other Zarya is still hurting him, so he never gets his health high enough to go back to swinging, so you put less pressure on the other team, and you lose. That's how this works. Okay. You say heal bad angle gets you so far, not past plat. Agree with that point, but you are needed to heal more because everyone takes more damage than they should. That's not right. So you need to adjust the way you play to fit the teammates around you. No, ultimately they don't. And ultimately what's happening, like, yes, they take in some ways more damage because the fight goes on longer sometimes than it should. And they take stupid amounts of damage rotating, and they take damage and don't earn good things with the damage they take. They don't trade their health efficiently. Those things are all true. But the enemies can absolutely be punished too, and it's still more efficient in many situations to punish the enemies for their own out of position mistakes than it is to go, oh, I'm going to, heal my teammate up instantly. I'm going to preempt them taking damage. You see this occasionally if you watch top 500 streamers do unranked to GM series. The player will make correct play, but won't be supported by their team, and they will get eliminated because of it. Right, and you'll see this. Like a Sigma will take an off angle, and they'll get pushed by a Rhine, and they'll back up expecting that now Rhine's going to fall into their team's concave, and the team's concave isn't there because the team is busy doing whatever the heck else it wants to be doing that is not the right play, when the right play was absolutely to punish the overextending Reinhardt. But the adjustment to that, because that will also happen, much less frequently, but will happen in GM games, is to go, oh, hey, I need to make sure that if I'm baiting Reinhardt in, that I'm actually safe. Like, the concept is you need to actually have reasonably good positioning. And your positioning can be more aggressive if your team is supporting a concave. And that's true in dive, that's true in brawl, that's true all the time. This could either be being too aggressive or trying to clear a flanker. The game has the same win condition at every rank, but how you play to get there does change. The game becomes exponentially more about teamwork as you rank up, and good players will adjust their playstyle based on how good their teammates are. Adjust their playstyle based off how good their teammates are. I think it's a bit naive to say bronze GMs are playing the same game because they really aren't. I mean, fundamentally, the game has the same abilities and such. Okay. Here's our downvoted one. The top 500 streamer doing the Unranked GM series fails to recognize the concept and dies because they don't recognize the lack of support. That's my entire point. People get too absorbed in their own locked playstyles rather than adapting situationally. They do. That's true. The whole idea is that there isn't a correct play to do all the time at all ranks in all situations. That's true. The key nuance is that the way a person plays should change based on the in-game context, how good teammates are, the map, which heroes, not directly based on rank. And that's true because ranks have a high degree of variance in what makes them up, which goes back to the original point. It's not like someone goes from plat to diamond and suddenly they're changing the way they apply their hero. They encounter similar situations to those in plat constantly. The mistake people make is trying to play rank rather than understanding how they can tie their play to situations, such as receiving less support regardless of rank. The problem, Anima, is you're talking to a wall. The people who are going to argue with you on this and the people who are going to fight you want the simple solution. They want no, tell me that warding moves me from silver to gold in League. They want the, like, tell me that edge guarding moves me up, these points in Smash Bros. Tell me the one thing or the three things that I need to do to move from this rank to the next rank. Like, what are the things that make this? And unfortunately, especially because this is not a 1v1 game, but is a 6v6 game with a huge number of team interactions, even for a 6v6 game, that doesn't work. So, like, I don't want to just write this off and be like, you're never going to convince them, but you're always going to have some people pushing back because that's what they want, and they're going to fight tooth and nail for it, unfortunately. Okay. Okay. Okay, you guys are going in circles. Fine. Fine. You guys can do better than this. You guys can do better than this. I know you. I know you can. We'll do one more refresh here to see if this is upvotes or comments. Oh, that one. Okay. Fine. So I'll catch up one more time on chat here. If you guys are enjoying this type of content, please do drop a like. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, as I really do appreciate that. And we'll see what we've got here. If I took this many words to put my point across in a dissertation, I'd absolutely get failed. Not necessarily. I mean, it really depends what you're trying to do, and it depends how much you're covering, again, anticipated objections and things like that. Yeah, like, I certainly hope that you're not in a place where you get to theses, papers, etc., where they're like, if it's more than 2 pages, you fail. There's times where you should be short and to the point, but there's also times and places, especially when working on an educational type thing like this, where you can get longer and should get longer as long as what you're doing is you're like, do those words actually provide value? Do they make it better? Short is more digestible. There is something to be said for that. You mean Cole Cassidy, not McRae? Okay. And one of the replies would have been featured in eliminated by word subreddit. Okay. But the forums say Sigma is OP, and Ryan just gets eliminated instantly to his overblown kit. Okay. Felt like talking to a wall. Sure. Okay. DRB says, and some guy said, I can't wait to see what Temporal says about this. I commented same, and they downvoted me. Ouch. Ouch. Let's take a look. Cool. No, you're positive. You're neutral because you start with one, but you're neutral positive. Okay. Cool. Okay. Okay. Because all this talk about efficiency and understanding shows that these games are way more complex than they appear on the surface, it also means that there is no easy button to fix why I'm stuck. Unfortunately, it does, and it's why sometimes it's why people tend to improve in plateaus in this game, because it's like you sort of get stuck, you build some habits. If you're doing it right, you go up, then you get stuck for a while. You might be improving on some things, but they're not helping you very much, and then you make another breakthrough that really helps. It's kind of why that happens. But yes, 6v6, very complicated game, very poor feedback mechanisms for when you're doing something right or better than you were doing it before, because the reward for having done that right is so inconsistent, and the punishment for doing it wrong can be pretty inconsistent too. Oh, come on, not the long bad, right? If Copernicus presented his theory of sun rotating around the Earth to Reddit, the world would have received he would have received hundreds of downvotes and Starkey replies. Yeah. There's a lot of rejection out there when explaining games concepts other than my teammates suck. Right, because people are looking for affirmation of their own self-worth. That's what they're looking for here. No, I'm good and my teammates are bad. Right. That's what you're going to tell me. And this isn't the social contract where it's like, yeah, they're terrible. They're totally not going to find someone better when they leave you. This is an educational forum, or it's supposed to be, for discussing, where we're going to be critical of each other's thoughts, ideas, etc. We need more hero mini guides. I know, guys. I know. That's probably not top of my list, but it is on the list. Okay. A temporal, they aren't downvoted because people have upvoted the stupid comments. I know. Okay, we'll go ahead and call it there. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Hey, Cager, just in time for us to wrap it up, I'm afraid. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you have, please do drop a like. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. If you'd like to be here live to be part of the conversation when we cover topics like these, best way to do that is to join my Discord in the description below. And in there, you can react in the Get Notifications channel to become a watcher, and then you'll get pings when we go live, so you can see, oh, what is Temporal covering? Is this a conversation I care about? Is this something interesting being reviewed? That sort of thing. You can, of course, also use YouTube system of clicking the bell to get notifications there. That absolutely works for you, but that is limited to about 3 times a day, and that one has a bit of a delay in when it goes out, whereas I will sometimes do more than 3 a day, and the Discord ping is instant if you're interested in it. Okay, we'll go ahead and call it there. Thanks, guys. Temporal out. And you're welcome, Kessel. No problem.